Hey guys, Peter Living on this channel is for educational purposes only and is not intended as financial advice. New year, same range. Let's take a look at some charts. A few things stand out to me in the alt realm. Mainly this amalgamation of market caps that have sort of melted together. I think we're going to see some differentiation here in some fashion over the next year. I know, bold statement, but maybe it'll be Tezos. A lot of people think that. We'll see, I don't know. The Tezos market cap actually wouldn't load for me today, but just believe me, it's in there amongst the scrum. Looking at the BTC Dominance, BTC.D on TradingView, as long as we're above the 200, we're not going to have an alt season. That's just how it's been historically. The last time we were below, consistently was really like July 2018, and then in March, EOS and LTC and a few others moved up before BTC did on April 1st. But other than that, it's pretty much been smooth sailing in the BTC realm, 70% based on their calculation, 100% based on the Maxis calculation, obviously. Now, if we look at futures and open interest and Tether and a few other like ancillary things, I always like to gauge like what does the market think about what's going on right now, and you can see that in open interest and things like futures premiums or backwardation, forwardation. So on the bottom here, the colors are the quarterly, which is the turquoise, the yellow is the weekly premium or negative premium, as I like to call it. So right now we have a growing quarterly premium. We have a weekly on par with spot, basically. I think this is fine. This is subjective. I'm just reading this as we've reset basically to zero as far as the premiums are concerned. People are getting a little more bullish now, especially on the quarterly as we range sideways. Now, if we make lower lows, you'd expect backwardation again, similar to previous periods of bearishness where quarterlies go below spot. So if we, for instance, break out of this inverted head and shoulders, which I think we will, I'd expect futures premium to grow more, especially on the weekly, which is currently on par with spot. Just something to watch for. It's really good to look at the premiums when things are like way out of whack, because then you can say, okay, amongst other things, if futures premiums are a bajillion compared to spot, it might be time to let some go there. Looking at CME futures contract rollover dates, specifically just the biannual contracts, which have essentially guided price since inception. It's either been up or down. 3 contracts have been down, 1 has been up. Some initial thoughts are if we make a decision towards the beginning of the contract, as far as up or down, to me that may signify the entirety of the contract. Although, previously we were up here, ended up way down. We were down here, ended up way up. So maybe that's just nonsense, but that's just my feeling. So again, if we break out of this invert head and shoulders, the feeling for me is the biannual contract will be bullish to June 26th. And there's having to consider, there's a bunch of other stuff in, more contracts and whatever else going on. But on balance, just looking at these biannual contracts, it's kind of been it. One thing that's concerning to me if I'm bullish is Tether market rate, which is currently below $1 and has been below $1 for 12 days, which is quite a long time consecutively. So these yellow highlights are anytime Tether is dipped below $1 on the market rate, which some people can say, this is just Kraken. It's a small representation of the entire market. Sure. I just think of it again as a weather vane. What's going on? Are people exiting crypto completely? Are people buying Tether to buy crypto? What's going on? I just saw 61 million Tether sent to the Tether treasury. That's not usually a good sign for bullishness. So the thinking for me again is if we do break up from this inverted head and shoulders, Tether's going to flip to $1, and that's going to signify bullish conditions. What I definitely don't want to see is Tether continue to dip below 9997, 9995, just 2 more weeks of Tether below $1 shouldn't signify bullish conditions. And I think that if Tether's below $1 and we're bearish, that means that everybody's just exiting out of the market completely rather than exiting Tether into crypto, which would be like, the closed loop equilibrium. I don't think that's the case. And seeing people send Tether to the treasury, especially, tells me that people are exiting at least Tether, which is the dominant stablecoin overall. And if we compare this to like the bearish market previously, on April 1st, Tether magically shot above $1. So this might not make sense logically. Why would Tether go up if price goes up, right? Because people should be exiting Tether into crypto. I don't know. I just think of it as there's demand for something and we go up. So even here, as soon as we started to pull up, Tether was above $1 again. So we'll see how we look if we do break up, but I have a strong likelihood in my mind that Tether's going to be above $1 if we break like 7.5 or something like that. And obviously this was other Bitfinex related shenanigans that caused the market rate to dip there, but it is what it is. If we look at open interest for Bitfinex, again, not something I like seeing if I'm bullish, is this massive open interest for longs. This is probably just Joe, just one guy on the leaderboard doing some shenanigans with margin and spot. Again, it is what it is, but I don't like seeing this at any point if I'm bullish. I'd rather see shorts at all-time highs if we're about to break up, much like we did previously. Here, for instance, this was at the end of 2018. Even in April, before we broke up, shorts were extremely high. So open interest, not too great for the long case. Looking at the pitchfork, my favorite, everyone's favorite. I'm justifying adding another rung here because we sort of were here. This is all subjective, guys. I know most people don't like this, but I do. And you'll notice the head and shoulders, inverted head and shoulders, is forming at the bottom of the pitchfork. Something I like to see, similar to here, how we had this bottomy thing happen at the bottom of the pitchfork. So if all bodes well, we should see a move to 8.5-ish in the near term, and then throughout the year we could see a mean reversion back to the median line, the yellow line, between 13 and 15 within the first 6 months, and then 15 to 30 in the next 6. So we'll see how that pans out. But if we look at the 12-hour, again, this pattern looks really good to me. It doesn't look perfect. I've seen better inverted head and shoulders or head and shoulders, but the R&R, you might say, isn't great. But as long as we're above the neckline, I think we have a pretty good shot at least 8.1 very quickly. What you may even see is a 30-minute shot to like 8.7, bleed to 8.1, and then make a decision from there. But I think this is definitely revving up for a move within the next 2 weeks, definitely within the month of January. And if you look at the 5,200, a move to the, from the 50 to the 200 isn't unreasonable. From, 7.5 to 8.1, again, whatever that is, perfectly fine. Looking at the cloud, we're above the Tenkin. This TK disequilibrium, we never really mean reverted back to the Kijun, but as long as we're sideways, this like evolves from a C-clamp to a bullish TK cross, and then eventually some sort of edge-to-edge thing on the cloud and or a bullish Kumo breakout. So it could look like this if it's slow and happens over months, or this could just thin out and go sideways, and then we just are out of the cloud. So we have a few options here, none of which are particularly mega bearish. Trend is certainly bearish based on the 200 and the cloud, but I'd be nervous shorting here unless we start making lower lows, because we're just clearly accumulating. We're revving up for something. Volume tells you that, especially declining volume in a sideways range. Then if we go to the weekly cloud and weekly 20 SMA, 8.5 again, both confluence areas, zones, levels to watch. So the 20 SMA is there, the weekly Kijun is there. This is basically the 50% retrace from local high to local low. And what I don't like is seeing this bearish TK cross happening, because if we get a bearish TK cross and we start dipping below the weekly cloud and the cloud is red, I mean, that's the checklist for bearishness in the long term. So, the alternative is this head and shoulders fails. We break out of the pitchfork to the downside. We break out of the weekly cloud to the downside. We visit the yearly support pivot at 2.3. Like that's the ultimate bearish case for this year. It's certainly possible. I'm not going to rule it out until we start making higher highs, breaking above the daily cloud, that sort of thing. Looking at ETH, I think the picture is much simpler. It's got to break 150 to 160 to have any chance of doing anything in the near term. This has been a massive no man's land. Wicks, resistance, support, resistance. So this is the zone to watch as far as, is it bullish or bearish in the near term? It may get this macro inverted head and shoulders where it's shoulder, head, shoulder again as it tests resistance between 150 and 160 and then eventually breaks out from 170 to 200. But that's probably a month away at this point. It does have descending volume profile, but there's no real pattern that I can see. Certainly not a clear inverted head and shoulders thingy like Bitcoin has. And then lastly, if we look at the ETH BTC chart, again, it's kind of below all these horizontal zones that are historic support or resistance, and it's just sort of biding its time, I guess. I mean, it's below the VPVR support, it's below cloud, it's below the 50, it's below the 200, it's below this horizontal, it's below this massive zone at 025 that arguably is a big psychological level. So again, if this, much like Bitcoin, if this can get above the 200, above the cloud, above these psychological levels, then we can talk about, ETH being the next whatever, Bitcoin, I don't know. But until then, it's just going to sideways range most likely. And shorting it is probably futile unless we start getting lower lows, just because I don't see, there's no bearish momentum per se just yet. Nothing building. That's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe. Hit me up on Twitter.